Alright, so we're back and it's time to get creative again. So today, I've got my model Rachel. And what we're going to do is, Rachel's growing her hair. We want to create a shape. She had some extensions, so there's some breakage in there. So what we want to do is create a shape that Rachel can grow her hair out in an easy, cool looking way. So, a couple things that I know I want to do is we want to keep the length here in the front as long as possible. She's going to be growing this out, but I'm thinking where it's going to be nice to create a nice, good, solid shape is kind of where most of the breakage is back here due to the extensions. This is where we're going to kind of focus on. I want to create more of a fuller shape. Right now it's kind of layered and simply just due to the breakage it lays a little on the flatter side. So my goal is basically to create some graduation right here. We're going to leave the length up here at the top as the longest point. Then from there we're going to kind of sit the hair in a little bit tighter back here so that it creates more fullness back here opposed to it being more flat. So we're going to graduate back here, keep this length as long as possible, keep the length here in the front as long as possible. We may trim a little bit here at the front, but right now, knowing that I want to keep the length back in the front, we're going to execute by starting in the back. This is where I know I want to develop the graduation to build up the fullness right here. So we're going to start here in the back and then from there work our way forward to the length. So on that note, we're going to get Rachel all shampooed and then we will be right back. So first thing I'm going to do, we discussed how we want to keep the length here at the top. That's kind of going to be our guideline for creating the shape from graduation from there down. So I'm going to take a center section down the back. It's going to be the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to comb the hair on the left side away. And then I'm going to take our first section, which is going to be a center section as well. And I'm going to comb this hair off to the side. Okay, so now we've got this center section right here. And you can see right now the top up here is the shortest piece. This piece right here, which is the crown area, is shorter than the rest of the back, which is creating more of a flatter shape. So when the short hair, basically the rule of thumb is short hair pushes long hair. So if the hair here is shorter, then let's say this hair down here, it's technically pushing it down. Short hair pushes long hair. So in layering, the fact that the crown is the shortest piece, it's actually making the back more flat. So we want to do the opposite. We want to make the crown the most fullest part, which is why we're going to do the opposite and create graduation. So we're going to use this top piece as our guide to now be the longest piece opposed to the shortest piece. So there it is right there. And I'm going to comb this hair straight out. Okay, and straighten your head a little bit, perfect right there. And then from there, there's the top piece, there's the shortest piece right there. So I'm going to cut straight down from that point on. And I'm basically doing a square layer first because I want to see what this looks like. But then after that, we're going to set the graduation in here. So, combing this out. Okay, so now we've got this first piece right here, and it's more of a square layer. The layer it was before was more of a concave layer. It was shorter here, getting longer there. We're actually reversing it now. I should say, actually, the first thing we did is we took it from concave to now square. So, let me turn here in profile. That first layer was actually shorter right here, and it got longer. So we were at a concave. Now we're at a more square. So from there, we're going to decide how much graduation we want to put in. But my first goal is to create the shape up here at the top. So we're actually going to take sections working our way to the front. We're going to over direct to the back to maintain this length up here at the front. So I'm going to take the next section, take a section straight down. We're going to do another square layer. Okay, I'm going to comb this hair straight back. And I'm going to look for the guide, which is the previous section we just cut. So you can see there's the guide right there. This is the part that we cut, and this is the part that's longer. So as you can see, we didn't even cut anything off this top really. This was our guide. Now from there we're cutting straight down. So you can see if our guide was the longest piece before, and this was longer, how the layers were actually built more of it, were shaped more concave, which is definitely going to create more flatness versus fullness. So now we're going to just reverse that. So, combing this hair straight back. And again, we're just focusing on getting these layers nice and square, and then we're going to sit the bottom part down with some graduation. Okay, so then I like to just kind of comb it, see how the shape's coming. We've cut 2 sections now. Already you can see it's more fuller. It's kind of got more of a bounce to it versus a flatness to it. So we're just going to follow the head shape all the way around, kind of following the previous section. And as we get up here to the front, because we're going to maintain this length, we're going to actually be over-directing everything back. So let's go to the next section, over-directing to the previous. Okay, there's our guide. Working my way down. And getting down here to the neck area. Okay, and then just again combing it. I like to comb it, kind of get an idea of how that shape is coming. You can see it's a lot more fuller already. So we're going to be graduating this bottom part here, but this piece right here, just due to squaring up the layers versus concaving, is creating more fullness right there. So let's continue around the head shape, or around the head towards the front. Now we're getting towards the front. We want to start over-directing this hair back because we want to maintain this length. So, starting with the section up here at the top. And there's not a lot to cut up here because this already was the shortest part of the hair, so it's not like we're cutting much off the top. We're keeping that top as long as possible. So you can see there's hardly anything coming off the top. Okay, just following my guide all the way down. Okay, working down closer to the neck, just following my section. Now I'm pulling straight back, opposed to the previous section, because we want to maintain the length at the front. Okay, again, just combing it down, kind of seeing how that shape is forming. You can already see how it's just creating a more fuller shape with each section that we do. Okay, so now continuing to the front. And this is all going to be over direct to the back. Okay, so starting here at the top. Again, there's not a whole lot that's going to come off up here at the top, just because the top is basically our guide. We're trying to keep that as long as possible. Where most of the length is coming off that we're cutting is the layers below, down here, below the top. So just following my section. Okay, again, just with each section that I cut, I'm kind of just seeing how the hair is laying. It's good to kind of get an idea if the hair is what the hair is doing. If you've never cut that individual's hair before, you don't know if their hair is going to react with calyx, or it might stick out, it might stick up, it might start to get wavy. Different hair reacts differently, so I like to kind of get an idea of what it's doing throughout the haircut. Okay, now we'll just working my way up to the front, and I'm just going to actually pull all of this into it. This will be the last section on this side as far as squaring up the layers. Okay, again, very little coming off up here. Working our way down, pulling everything straight back. And the reason we're pulling everything straight back is so that we're over directing it back so that it leaves it longer when it falls forward. Alright, so now we've got the layering done on this side. We're going to do the layering on the other side, and then we'll start to address the graduation down here. So now we've got the layers in shape. And where we discussed earlier in the consultation, there, just due to some extensions, there were some breakage in here. So this is really where I want to focus most of getting the graduation in. So now what we need to do is decide how we want the graduation to sit. We want to leave as much of this length here as possible. So we want to come up with a shape that allows us to leave this length and still look good, but still look full and thick here in the back. So I'm going to turn Rachel to the side. Basically, we're going to look in the mirror at the profile. Okay, so as I look at the basic shape through the mirror, and kind of what I'm going to do is I'm going to take basically my hand and kind of create a shape. Kind of imagine, okay, if I took the bottom off to here and we built this graduation up through here, does it still look good with this length here? Okay, I think that's a good shape right there. That's a good length. Could we, do it even tighter, and would it look better? Would it look the same? Or if we did it a little bit longer, would it look better? Would it look the same? So basically what you're going to want to do is kind of just use your hand and pretend that hair's gone and kind of get an idea of what the shape looks like before you actually execute the cut. And if you're satisfied with what you see before cutting, then usually that's a good sign to go ahead and do that shape. You don't want to cut it in first and then realize, I actually didn't like that, I should have left it longer. So kind of just play with it. So what we're going to do here is, I kind of like this shape right here. It still leaves the outline a little bit on the longer side. That outline looks really good with the length that we've got going here. It's not a really big transition from short to long. It actually blends and goes pretty fluidly. So we're going to start to graduate this bottom part. What I'm going to do first is actually cut an outline. So I'm going to cut this outline to about right here, and then from there establish the graduation. So now that I've kind of got an idea of where I like that specific length, we're going to go ahead and start sectioning it off to get that outline to that length. So now what I'm going to do is take a center section again down the back. And we're going to section off the left side and create an outline. Now, you could have cut the outline first. There's no wrong way. One way to have executed this haircut would have been to cut the outline there first and then square up the layers. But because I knew that this top part, this top section, was going to be our guide, I chose to cut based off of our guide first because I knew absolutely 100% we weren't going to go shorter than this. I choose to do the layers first because I knew once I established the layers, then I could do what we just did, turn Rachel to the side and from a profile kind of get an idea of where it would look good, bringing up the length based off of the layers. So that's why I chose to do the layers first, because I knew those layers were our guide. That top layer was our guide. So I did the layering first and now the outline second. In many, many cases, you would typically do the outline first and the layering second. So in case you're wondering, why did we do the layering first? That's the reason. I knew that we were going to use this top layer as our guide. So from there, this top layer basically was the guide for the entire haircut. So knowing that, I went with the guide, created those layers, and now I'm creating the rest of the haircut based off of the one certainty that I knew, which was we weren't going to go shorter than this later here. So hopefully that makes sense on the order on why I did that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the outline up. And I'm just combing it down and cutting it through my scissors. Okay, so now I'm going to take the next section, using the section that we just cut as our guide. And I'm going to comb this hair straight down. You can see the guide right there underneath. I'm just going to comb this hair straight down and use that guide to cut this previous section, or this following section. Okay, and as we get higher, less hair is going to reach, so you'll see that there won't be a whole lot of hair to cut as we work our way up. So, and that's simply because these layers were already shorter than the outline, so this is just not going to reach down there. So as you can see, we only have this much to cut down here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is our next section I'm going to wrap all the way around from the back to the front. And actually I'm probably just going to comb it all straight down because I already know the layers up here at the front are not going to reach down here. I'm just going to comb it all down in one shot. And I'm going to cut the sides in two sections. Behind the ear is one section, in front of the ear would be another section. So you can see right here, this is the very, very front. This is the length that we're wanting to keep right there. So I'm just going to take a very tiny bit off. I do think it needs to be trimmed, so we're just going to dust the very bottom. So you can see most of the length still stayed there at the front. So now we're going to do the other side. We're going to use this as our guide, do the exact same thing on this side. Okay, I'm just going to hold the hair through the comb. One of the things that you need to be aware of is obviously the ear creates an extra obstacle for the hair to have to come out away from the head, over the ear, and then down. So if you were to cut the hair in a perfectly straight line right here, when the hair dried, this one section above the ear, as it dries, it's going to shrink up, and then you're going to have a hole in your outline. So you should compensate for that ear, and there's a couple of things you could do. One, just be aware of it and leave the hair a little bit longer, or comb the hair down and then tap right above the ear. By tapping here, you're pulling the hair up the comb, leaving that hair longer. And then another thing that you can do is use very little tension, because if you pull with a lot of tension, let's say you use the smallest tooth side of the comb and you pull really straight, you cut that line, this is going to shrink up even further when it dries due to the ear. So you can use a large tooth comb or just use very little tension, or basically kind of just touch it with your scissors right above the ear so that it's pulling that hair back up and kind of keeping in mind that that's going to shrink up there. So you just want to compensate for that. Okay, so now we've got the outline all cut. What we want to do now is we've left the length in the front, which is what we wanted to do, and we left the length in the top. So those are the two most important pieces. With her growing it out, we didn't want to take the front any shorter, and we didn't want to take the top any shorter. But what we want to do is create a nice shape right through here, through the back, to create that graduation so it's thicker and fuller looking. So now what I'm going to do is turn my model to the side again and kind of start to play with the hair to kind of get an idea of how it's starting to lay. So basically now I have to figure out how tight do I want to take this graduation. So what we've done so far is we've done the layers and we've done the outline. Now we're going to remove this weight right here so that it has a nice graduated shape, which again creates fullness up here at the top. So I'm going to play with it in little bit, kind of do it in phases. So I'm going to do a little graduation and then kind of take a peek at it and do a little bit more graduation if I feel I need to. So having never cut Rachel's hair before, I kind of want to do it in little phases to just get an idea of how it looks. And then what we'll do is we'll blow dry it, and I'll probably even graduate it even maybe a little more after it's dry. But once it's dry, hair reacts different from wet to dry. So a client always wears their hair dry opposed to wet, which is why it's very important to make sure the haircut looks good dry versus as well as looking good wet. A lot of people will cut the hair wet, blow dry it, and send their clients on their way, which is fine, but the problem is the hair is slightly changed in that process of blow drying. And the client most likely is going to go home and blow dry their hair as well, so you want to make sure it looks good after the blow dry in the state that they're most likely going to wear their haircut in. So I'm going to go through, graduate this bottom, and kind of play with it, and then we'll blow dry it, and then if I need to, I can always graduate a little bit more. Now, what we're going to do is, again, going down, taking a section straight down the middle. So we did a center section to start the layers, then we did a center section to start the outline, and now we're doing a center section again to start the graduation. So, 3 center sections, 1 for each phase of the haircut. Okay, so here we go. So, there's going to be a corner right here about where my hands are. And that corner is what we're going to cut off, which is going to create the graduation. How much of that corner is what I'm trying to figure out do we want to cut off? And that's basically going to be determined by what looks best. So we're going to start off with a little piece, see how it looks, and then we can always do more. So, as you can see, here's the corner. It comes out and goes like this. Got a corner right there. And that's the corner we want to cut off. But we don't want to touch the outline, so I want to make sure that outline's falling through. So as I lift my hand, you can see more and more outline dropping out. That's what we want to do down here. So I'm grabbing this hair, I'm letting the outline, this hair fall out so we don't cut that into that, because otherwise you're going to have like a hole in your outline. But we do want to cut this corner. So as some of this outline falls out, I'm safe to not have a hole in the outline, and then I cut that corner up to the layers. Okay, so kind of just seeing how that's sitting. We're going to do this side and then kind of take a peek at it and see if we need to take that graduation even further. And you can see my fingers are in a graduated shape. So graduation meaning a diagonal shape, longer to shorter. You can see the comb. Before they were in a square shape because we were layering. So my fingers were actually, you know, as you can see here the comb, they were from ceiling to floor in a nice square shape. Now they're at a diagonal because we're creating graduation versus creating layerings. That's very important because the way your fingers are positioned will dictate the shape that you cut. And a lot of people will miss that. They'll do the right sectioning because they're so focused on what sections to take, but then they leave their fingers in the wrong position and they create the wrong shape, which then creates the wrong haircut. So it's absolutely important that you are aware of the positioning of your fingers. Okay, so again, just cutting that graduation in. We're going to keep going, working our way forward. And taking this bottom corner off. And there's less and less corner as we start to get towards the front. The biggest corner is going to be in the middle back. But again, we can take it down a little bit more. It's always easier to take hair shorter than put hair back after you've cut it. So I like to do it in phases. I like to do it, kind of see how it looks. If it needs to be shorter, I can do that. But if you take it off and you then think you should have left it longer, unfortunately, you won't be able to. So, always better to do it in phases. Okay. So now, we're getting up here to the front, over directing this hair all back. There's very little corner left to take off. Okay. So now I'm going to just kind of turn my model to the side. Got to get a profile idea of how that shape's coming along. Okay, and so I'm liking the shape. We're going to see after it's all blow dried if I want to take it down a little bit more, but for now, I'm thinking that's a pretty good length. So now we're going to execute the other side. And what we're going to do is go ahead and blow dry the hair and then finish the haircut after it's dry. I want to go through and finish the layers, maybe tighten up the graduation a little bit more, kind of play with it. But what we're going to do now is blow dry the hair and then take it from there. Okay, so we are all done blow drying, and now what I want to do is kind of get an idea of this shape. So before, the shape was actually concave, as you can remember. Shorter here, longer here, and it created more of a flat, very flat shape in the back. But now we've actually done square layers through here, and then graduating through there. And so what I want to do is kind of start to play with a little bit more of this graduation. I kind of just looking at it through the mirror. We just blew dry the hair, and there's some natural volume going on, and I think it's a little bit more flattering if we just take that in a tiny bit more. Nothing crazy, but just take that graduation a little bit more so it's not so full, not so bubbly. We do want it full, but we want it full up here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and take the exact same sections we took to cut it. And I'm kind of just going to go through and get an idea of where I would want to make it sit in a little bit more. And so here's the original corner that goes from graduation to layers. And so I'm going to trim that corner a little bit more just to help it lay in a little nicer. And then we'll take a look how it's laying and see if we want to go a little bit more. As I said before, it's always easier to go little at a time than whack it all off, and then of course you can't bring that hair back. So that's why we took off part of the corner when it was wet, and then I said, let me see what it looks like after we blow dry it, and if I felt that it needed to be cut down more, we always could do it after it was dry. So that's the phase that we're at now. Okay. And I'm just taking the same section that we took when it was wet, but just taking that corner in a little bit more. Again, we'll look at it. If it looks good, we'll leave it. If we think it needs to sit in a little bit more, we can always do that. Okay, and then again, working my way up here to the front. And it's important that the outline starts to fall out here. So that we don't cut a hole in the outline. I guess I should say why. We want the outline to fall out so we don't cut a hole in the outline, which is pretty important. And then I'm going to go ahead and over direct all of this back. And again, I'm going to take this outline out just to make sure we don't cut any of it. And kind of see how that's looking. And then I'm going to go through and cross-check it. And we'll take it, actually I'm going to do this other side as well, and then we'll take a peek at it and cross-check it from there. Okay, just sitting that in a little bit more. Now I'm going to go through and cross-check this. And cross-checking basically is just going the opposite way that the hair was cut. So we cut everything from top to bottom. Now I'm going to cross-check going, I should say vertically. Now I'm going to cross-check everything going horizontally. So it just basically helps you find any little tiny inconsistencies throughout the haircut and kind of strengthen and polish up that outline and that shape. So working my way up to the top. Again, this is where the square layers kicked in, and this is really where our guide was. Okay, I'm working my way up. And the way I'm going to cross-check this is in panels. So right now we're doing the center back. Okay, I just did right here in the center panel, kind of seeing how that looks, how that's laying, getting an idea of how the shape is going. And then I'm going to do this panel, and then this panel, of course, and then the other side. So I'm going to go to this next panel over. and just taking off very little, those little inconsistencies that you get throughout the haircut, making sure it's all nice and perfect, working my way up in a horizontal sections. Okay, combing it down again, and then just seeing how that shape's coming along. And working my way towards the front. And working my way up towards the top. Okay, and very little is coming off the top because, as you remember, if you can remember from the beginning, very little came off the top from the beginning. We really are trying to keep the top as long as possible, as well as the front length, to make growing it a little bit easier. Okay, so now we're just kind of carrying on through to the side, and I'm going to cross-check the side, same thing. Horizontal sections, but we over-directed back, so I want to make sure that we don't cut this length off. And again, I'm going to let the outline fall here. This is the most important piece. That is the piece that we left the longest. But then we have these layers that were here in the front, and those were there before we started. So what I want to do is just kind of blend things through a little bit more evenly. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dust off this corner. And this corner was created by the layers that were already here versus the layers that were already here and the layers that we just created back in the back. And so we're just going to blend them now so they kind of flow a little bit better. Whenever you have a corner, it usually creates weight, and weight usually creates heaviness, and heaviness creates flatness, and it's harder to style and dress hair when it's heavy. You don't have to necessarily want volume, but anytime hair is heavy, it's just hard to manipulate hair into a certain style. So it's usually a good idea, if you can, to eliminate corners if you're looking for lightness. Okay, so now you can kind of see the layers just blend in a little bit better from the front to the back. You've got the graduation right here. That creates more fullness right here, so it's not as heavy. We do have this length that we're keeping up here, and then I'm going to save for last. We're going to go through and just trim up the front area, the fringe area, but I'm going to do that last. I just want to make sure everything before we get to that piece is flowing nicely. And then, like I said, we'll do the other side, and then we'll address the front and the back. Okay, so now I'm going to go through and strengthen up the outline. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my comb, I'm going to hold it here, and just go through and use the scissors to cut any small tiny bits of graduation that we don't want in the outline. Okay, and then I'm just combing it down, putting my hand there so the hair doesn't move, and again, just strengthening up that outline. Okay, so now we're going to address the fringe area, the bangs, and kind of the front. And since we're growing that, we're just simply going to dust it, kind of just trim it a very, very small little piece. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to cut the fringe a little bit. Right now, if I comb it all straight forward, it's basically just kind of, there's actually two pieces. There's a level right there and a little bit of a longer level. I'm going to bring it up a little bit and do more of an asymmetric shape so that the hair kind of flows this way. Her part's on this side. And so I want to be able to make that hair kind of part that way a little bit easier. So what we're going to do is go in here and kind of cut an asymmetric shape. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scissors, I'm going to put it under the hair, I'm going to lift it up, and I'm going to put my comb underneath the hair. I'm going to take my scissors and kind of pat the hair down into the comb, And that's how I'm going to hold the hair. Opposed to using my fingers, I'm going to use the comb. And we're going to go in and create that asymmetric shape. And then I'm going to freehand it right through here. And I'm going to take a peek in the mirror. And we're going to get longer as we go this way. And this way she can still grow her bangs out, still grow her fringe out, but it's going to swoop over to that side a little bit easier due to it being in an asymmetric shape. So now I'm actually going to carry it over to here on this side, a little further over. And I'm going to take the fringe on this side right to where the hairline starts. Okay. And now I'm going to go on this side and make sure it flows asymmetrically all the way through. Again, I'm going to take my scissors, put it under the hair, put the comb right under, use the comb to hold it. And that way I don't have to use my hands to hold it. And I'm slowly getting longer and longer as we come down here. Again, I'm not cutting much from here because she wants to grow it, so this isn't changing a whole lot other than just kind of cleaning it up. I think it's a good idea in this particular case, and not always, to layer the bangs a little bit because we just layered everything else, so then that way the whole hair cut has a layered feel to it. So there's a corner. Anytime you cut a blunt line, you're going to have a corner. And so we're just going to go through and very subtly just chip into that corner, just so it's not as much of a blunt line. And the corner is going to be at the top. Actually, let me turn sideways so you can see where this corner is. So I'm going to take one section right here, and then the next section, kind of just like we did sections for the layering in the back, we're going to do the same thing here. So the first section I took was right by the part. So the next section I'm taking is next to the part, combing this straight up, and there's the corner right there. Very little, small. And again, we're just taking a little at a time. You can always take more, but let's take a tiny bit, kind of see how it looks, and decide if we need to take more of a corner to create more layering in the fringe and the bang area. Okay, so basically, we are pretty much done with the cut. If you guys have any questions in regards to what I did, please feel free to put them in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more haircut videos and tutorial videos. As I cut more of these haircuts, you'll be able to be notified of them. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up as well if you liked it. And I will see you guys on the next video.